Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of August 19th through the 25th today. And there's a lot going on this week. Let's see, we got starting off with a full moon in Aquarius at the critical 28th degree, forming a fixed T-square with Uranus, and there's actually a lot of other stuff wrapped up in that full moon too. Venus opposite Saturn that day, Jupiter square Saturn also. So all that stuff wrapped up in one big package and making a couple different T-squares all together. Then later on in the week, we're going to get a yod forming between Neptune and Pluto's sextile, with the sun getting on the long midpoint there and creating a yod. So we got that. And then next week, and a lot of interesting energy with Chiron that I think we can use really positively. So I want to get into those things, the main stuff for this week. And just a little reminder first, the Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. And if you have a YouTube account, you can become a follower. And don't forget to turn on your notifications if you do. Also, the blog is available on podcasts. It was available on podcasts long before it was a YouTube channel. It's distributed by Buzzsprout. Just check out, go out there and just check out Astrological Winds channel. Just do it as a search and you'll find podcasts that carry the blog, and you can tune into it that way. That way you're not as attached to the video. You can listen to it at a different time. Also, I do post the link on Instagram. The Astrological Winds channel has its own Instagram page. So if you have an Instagram account, you can become a follower there. And sometimes I do post extra information during the week there, just in comment form. It's not a video or audio form, so you might miss out on a couple things here and there, but it's a good way to also see it. And I do also have it on my private Facebook page, which is Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten. You have to friend me first, and then it'll show up in your newsreel every week. And the best place to find it, of course, is on the website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. No channel, just astrologicalwinds.com. And that's where I embed every blog, so you can also find blogs from the past few weeks there, the past couple months, and if you need to refer back to them, they're available to check. Also, best way to support me, I'm a professional astrologer. I've been one for many, many years, over 20 years, professionally trained, 7 years, do astrological counseling. I have all kinds of services available. If you check the website, one more time, www.astrologicalwinds.com, you'll see a menu there, price list there. If you need to work with me on the cost, let me know. We can work on that. A lot of different services offered to individuals and groups. So if you're ready for that, or you know someone ready for that, that is the best way to support me. Right now, also, every $5 you give as a donation to the blog enters you in a chance into winning a free reading. And you can do that at Venmo, which is just at the symbol at Matthew, 2 T's, capital M hyphen Lauten with a capital L, or my Cash App is just the $ Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten, all one word. And like I said, for every $5 you give to the blog, I will enter you as a chance to win a free reading. So that's available too. And the biggest thing I ask is, it is a free service I'm giving. So please, even if you've done it before, pass the link along. You guys are doing a great job doing that, helping me out and having the blog grow in an organic way. So let's just get into this here. A really big full moon again today, Monday, full moon in Aquarius. And that's, I remind you guys every month, and, like to teach people who know a little about astrology and want to learn more. And remember, if you don't know any, you just want to listen to the interpretation. Don't get lost on the astrological information, and language. If you don't know it, listen to that interpretation. That's what's really important. Anyway, full moon, it's the moon opposite the sun, right? So we have an opposition. That means always in a full moon. That means the energies are opposing one another, right? And so when the full moon is in Aquarius, Aquarius, the energy of Aquarius is looking for like intellect, looking for discipline, looking for like logic to find security. That's the way that Aquarius wants to go out and establish something like that to feel good. So like cool logic, creating a system, perfecting a system, something like that, something that's useful for more than just you too, going beyond the bounds of the personal and into the collective. And then it's opposite Leo, which is the most individualized sign. So this is all very much about personal creative energy, really wanting to express yourself, really wanting to show what you can do as an individual that makes you special. And so the opposition that gets created here is that the moon in Aquarius is like, well, that's fine, but like if that's too selfish and stuff, what good is it? Is it really helping society? And there's also like with Leo, this very like playful energy. Leo is the energy of our own self-creativity, our own expressing ourselves, our own most playful parts of ourselves, our inner child even, So in a way for Aquarius, that's a little bit hard. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus, and it wants something more serious. It wants results. It wants to see what is the value of this creativity. Is it serious enough to be something that's worthy of, of what you're actually doing? Or is it all just something that's really rather selfish and it's really not feeling, really putting that out in a valuable way for others, So, it's funny because Leo, Leo's also about the intuition too. So there is a connection to the mind, but it's a much more creative feeling connection than Aquarius and the way it approaches things with coolness and logic. Leo can be very spontaneous energy, and it can be very, very, like I said, very, very like self-centered when it pushes that out. So, it's looking for some kind of recognition. It's looking for some kind of respect. It wants to show that it has talents. And, and like I said, so Aquarius is like, well, how can we get this to fit into something that's better for the group? How can we get this to shine? And then all of a sudden we have Uranus forming this fixed T-square with them. Now, like I said, this is at the critical 28th, 29th degree. So once again, it's at the very end of these two signs, and this is the creativity axis. So it's like we need to like learn these lessons now, or we're going to be repeating them all over again, And what's interesting is the T-square to Uranus, it's pretty tight too. Uranus is out at about 28 degrees too in Taurus. And then for the last several years, Uranus has really been shaking up the Taurus world, the world of materials and assets and banking. It's been very, up and down, unreliable, a lot of things going on back and forth. And it's kind of interesting because Uranus is actually, is associated with Aquarius, because there's a lot of like high intellectual ideas that are created by Uranus that can help improve systems, which is exactly the goal of Aquarius, of, improving systems for the greater whole. So there's a lot of like congruency there, but it's also a lot like Leo in its spontaneity. Like it just wants to do things very spontaneously, Uranus. It wants to bring in excitement. It wants to stimulate things like Leo does, and it wants to come from a creative space. It's really interested in bringing in new ideas that are creative, intellectual energy. So there's like, this thing where it's like, well, a lot of times, you can see it go for the Aquarius thing, but it's also feeding that Uranus is also feeding that Leo side of like, being the individual who can act out individualistically and act out very spontaneously, act out rebelliously at times, jump to conclusions without using that cool logic, without creating some kind of routine or system first. So there's a lot of emotional unrest in this full moon, and it'll likely spur events around us too. Like, we can feel that inner turmoil many times will actually be what brings out events in your own personal sphere that are upsetting, because there's this turmoil going on. And then also on a larger scale in society, once again, what's this Uranus been saying? Like the way we're dealing with the material world and assets and things like that is really getting shaken up right now. So when Uranus gets in a full moon like this, it can really, as we know, on full moons, people can act out very spontaneously and openly, rebelliously, and do some pretty wild things. So you add Uranus into that energy, and it's like, people may act out. We may see some man-made disasters, or we may see, as always around the full moon, natural disasters, but also with Uranus involved, that's the ruler of natural disasters. So we could see some really big naturally disaster events this week, this whole new moon cycle too. So you have to be really careful about that. Now, interesting, when you think about the fixed T-square, it's also showing that in our personal life, a lot of the issues going on in this full moon is having an entrenched position about things. And both Leo and Aquarius can be like that, where they can be very fixed, very stubborn about, feeling that they're right, and, getting this almost arrogant kind of attitude, self-righteous attitude, and so it's really one of those things that, once again, we have to check that in and be careful of Uranus really pushing that again and really shaking up things, the Aquarius moon is definitely looking for what is the greater good for all of us in the future. And that Leo is like, but what can I do now? What can I do now? And what is something I can create and do right now to help that future? So if we don't go along with that energy purposely, that's when that Uranus energy can really bring in disruptions. And we can see that happen in situations and relationships, things around us just get that, seem like they're in a state of breaking down, can very much get to that point under this full moon, especially with the Uranus, where they will break down rapidly. And I mean, really, the best way to deal with this full moon is to embrace change, to let it come in. Don't get overly impulsive, because you'll do things that you regret very, very quickly. Now it's interesting, the open end of the T-square is in Scorpio. So that's showing we really need to take a deep look inside ourselves in order to resolve a lot of this energy, to do some brutal, honest work on looking inside ourselves and seeing where we may be blocking certain things ourselves with our old attitudes, with things like that, our old belief systems, things that we might have adopted. Are they really us? Are they really that Leo sun, And is that are we trying to fit into something that's not working? And is that why we're resisting the system? Can we find something that deep inside there where we're like, okay, I want to be responsible for this, bring that into the creative flow, and then start to add to that system and create and change it, and try to start to find new solutions in this time where Uranus is going through Taurus and really shaking up the material world and the things around us. Now, interestingly enough, the ruler of this full moon, the traditional ruler, is Saturn. And what is Saturn doing today? Saturn's actually in a T-square itself today, in a mutable T-square. Saturn, remember, is retrograde in Pisces, right? And it's opposite Venus in Virgo, still weak in Virgo. And then both of them are squaring Jupiter. Remember, I talked about that in the monthly. So there's a lot going on there right now. And the square, it's interesting because once again, let's go back first to that square with Jupiter real quickly. I did mention in the monthly, this is the first quarter square of the conjunction, the great conjunction that happened at 1 degree Aquarius back at the end of 2020, when a lot of us were, these are new projects, new age coming on, blah, blah, blah. Now we've reached this period about 4.5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, where a lot of the stuff that we might have been trying to get together and work on, we can see where parts of those are failing now. And this is a time where they've reached a critical point where we really have to figure out what's working and what's not working for us. So it's a time to trim certain things away, to make adjustments to those plans that we wanted, and just start focusing more on what's working. And this is, when Jupiter squares Saturn, it's a very personal process in doing this. We really have to look at our own reality and the way that we do things. We may not, people may want to give us advice, but it's not really helpful right now. For the most part, we really have to follow what's going on inside us. But yet, we need to understand there is an uncertainty. There's a restlessness. We're not really sure what to do yet. And what it wants us to do, it's like Saturn's slow down. Observe things, especially while Saturn's retrograde too. Observe things. Don't rush into anything right now. And this can be a particularly sensitive time for business projects that you may have been involved in for several years. This is a very critical time where the decisions you make now can have repercussions for years to come. So you don't want to get risky right now. You don't want to get impulsive. You want to work within your finances and your limitations and the restrictions that are there. Don't try to completely, go full on forward. You really need to discern right now what is working. And sometimes too, the reality is you may figure out it's not working at all now, and you may actually completely change where your focus is onto something that's more beneficial, or even change your career or something. And remember too, with the Venus in Virgo involved, Venus is very weak in Virgo, so that shows that what's going on here, there may be relationships that are blocking a lot of that current project. The relationships may be the thing that somehow is not allowing that to move forward right now. So, and part of that may be how much stuff do we owe in our duty to someone, and how much do we owe to ourselves, and this can make us feel we really need to discern this, but we can really put ourselves in a secondary position a lot of times with Venus and Virgo, like I talked about a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago when it went in there. So we have to be very, very careful that we don't disconnect ourselves so much and feel like, oh my gosh, the gap between us is so wide, I'm never going to be able to close it. And remember, relationships are always reflecting some need within ourselves, albeit in maybe a much greater form when it comes in. But it's there's something in us that we're, maybe we're hurting ourselves, holding ourselves back somehow, thinking that we got to perform some duty or something else for someone where we really need to move forward. Now, remember, this is a mutable T-square, this one. So what we need to do is make adjustments that are on the fly. The open end of this T-square is Sagittarius. So it's saying we need to take in some greater knowledge. If we're feeling stuck and blocked in these projects and relationships and things like that, and it's boiling into this full moon energy, what we need to really do, on this level, is to take in some greater knowledge, learn some more. That may be what we're, why we're stuck. It's interesting too, this full moon is actually opposite Mercury retrograde. So once again, that's showing, like I've been saying the last week or two, a lot of the dialogue is inner dialogue. Even if we're talking outside, there's a lot more going on inside, and remember, when Mercury gets involved with the moon, it really can get us irrational with our thought process and that self-talk. It can very much be influenced by our emotions. So, old judgmental attitudes can come up, stuff that we learned from the past. But once again, it's showing not a good time to make serious agreements. It's a time actually to withdraw into yourself. Get in touch with your own emotions and start to process them, gain some clarity over them, and it's interesting too. The one other thing that's really interesting about this full moon, and I don't have myself set up to show you guys the full moon on a chart or on the board this week, but it does actually square also Pallas Athene in Scorpio. So if you want to put an asteroid in there, it's forming a grand cross. And I think, once again, that's showing the same thing, that it's our ideas that may be having us stuck right now. We're stuck in certain ways of thinking about things, stuck positions, especially in our mind, especially in our intellect. And it's probably creating a lot of the conflicts and problems that we're having in our lives, both personally and collectively. So we all need to look in this full moon where we're stuck, in why we're stuck in those ways now, and start to make some adjustments, widen our experiences, gain some knowledge, confront ourselves first, and then point out to those who are close to us and ones who are stuck in certain belief systems in gentle ways. Hey, these are things that, I'm starting to work on, can you start working on them with me, if you're in relationships with those people. But a very interesting full moon, because it really is asking all of us, wanting that attention, all of us needing that recognition, all of us having a need to be who we really are and what we're meant to be here. And if we find that on that Leo side and that Uranus side, then we can upgrade the system of the Aquarius side, and everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, and then everything starts to get better. But we have to be really, there's a lot of balance, a lot of stuff to look at in this full moon in order to get there. And while it's Mercury retrograde, it's a good time to once again look inside on that stuff first and go from there. Okay, I want to get into a couple other things. It's getting late on the blog already. So Wednesday and Thursday, I've said this to you guys if you've been following the blog for years. Neptune and Pluto have been in a long, 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 long sextile with each other for many, many years, decades actually, really. It goes in and out of orb. And it's because they both move pretty much at a very similar rate. And so on Wednesday and Thursday, the sun is going to quincunx both of them, which means it's going to be right at the midpoint of them, but on the long midpoint, which means it's creating a grand aspect pattern that we call a yod. And it can be a very fatefully oriented type of aspect where we kind of just need to go along for the ride. It's hard to steer a yod's energy, and when we do, it usually goes off course. It's almost like as if the universe is saying to us, hey, I know a better destination for you than the one you chose on the map. So so just come along for the ride, and and I'll get you to a place that you wouldn't normally be able to access by yourself. And this one can make us very impressionable to and sensitive to outside influences. So we have to be really careful about what we're taking in during this yod, and make sure that it really fits what we believe in, because we can fall under strange influences. We can allow our idealism to take us too far, almost take us on a roller coaster ride, and just not being able to slow it down. So we also, this is a time where our bodies could be extra sensitive to diseases, allergies, the medications that we take. our addictions, those kind of things. So we have to be really, really careful about our bodies this week too, and what we're taking in and how we're treating them, but like I said, this is an energy that's going to make us very, very sensitive, and that's what we have to be careful of, that we don't fall down some impressionable hole, that we're just being a follower and not really thinking through how this matches with our ideals and the other things we're going through at this time. Then on Thursday, also, the sun is going to go into Virgo. So it's the end of the summer in the northern hemisphere, and because the zodiac was developed in the northern hemisphere, Virgo really relates to harvesting type of energy. But this is a time where we really slow down our approach, and we get very careful in the way we do things. We really want to meet the standards that we have, the highest standards that we have in what we're doing. We want to meet, and we're very good at using the tools around us to help us do that. So anything that can be used as a tool to perfect our system, Virgo can merge the mind, the hands, and tools together really well, and make things very efficient, make systems work really well. Now, the biggest issue with Virgo is when it's sensing that those standards are not being met, that things are not being taken as a careful, serious approach, then it can get very judgmental and very critical. And if you push that out onto others, because it's easy to see all the faults, you can really drive people away from you. So you want to take that criticism and bring it into yourself, really use it as self-criticism. The other thing about Virgo too is it has a lot to do with our health. And so it's a good time to start up new health regimes. Once again, if you're feeling kind of like that Neptune, Pluto, Sun that I was just talking about, making sure your body's in good shape now. Strengthen up your body, get the hygiene going, get the diet and the exercise on a program. We can fall into kind of hypochondriac type of attitudes with Virgo energy too. So we could imagine ailments that may exist only in our own mind, and we have to be really careful about not creating that actually in our body by the power of our thoughts. So, but it's all, very much about wanting to serve ourselves, serving others, just being really careful about being overly critical. Now, also, we got a Venus square Mars that day. Now, Venus square Mars can be in personal relationships, there can be tensions that come up. And many times that can have a sexual base if it's that kind of relationship, maybe unmet sexual needs or just sexual tension that's building up, and sometimes too, we can find ourselves at creative odds with others. It's just it's very stimulating energy, actually. It's very passionate energy, but it can get very self-centered. It can get egotistical, and then all of a sudden it starts to create imbalances in relationships. So that's where a lot of the tension can come up, discord can come up, and that can end up leading into battles and arguments, and basically very difficult to compromise. If we're not in relationships, a lot of times we can be undiscriminating or indiscriminating with the attention that we're giving others at this time, And if you do have a good connection with someone, though, this is really great energy for creative energy together, which can be, once again, romantic, sexual energy. It can be this really intense, passionate, beautiful energy. And it also, on a personally creative level, it's really good to output your own individualistic, personal, creative, artistic work now. Once again, you might struggle trying to connect with others on it, but if you can push your own now, it's a great time to do it. And then Friday and Saturday, last thing I want to talk about, Mercury retrograde, remember, getting second hits as it goes backwards. We'll get its second hit to a trine to Chiron, a sextile to Mars, and Mars is also sextiling Chiron. And at the same time, Venus is quincunxing Chiron. And I think these four aspects are coming, Chiron's the common denominator, right? So I think these four aspects can be very useful together for healing energy, I think it'll give us a really good sense of who we have a good back and forth rapport with, and that's the healthy kind of relationship that we want to build, where we can assist one another, that it feels like there's a balance. And that may require some letting go of old relationship attitudes, or even possibly old relationships themselves that may represent the blocking and the pain that Chiron can bring in. So this can give us the opportunities to create new ways of doing relationships, coming right from the attitude we have ourselves, or to actually redo real relationships. There's a lot of ability to bring in healing and harmony into relationships between you and the other. And I think, that's a really good way to determine who is worthy of being in your life. If you feel harmony with those persons, and you're feeling like you share a lot of the same ideals and beliefs, those are the ones that are going to bring healing into your life, and you're going to bring it into those and to them. So these are the people you don't have to convince them what you believe in. You know that already you're there with them, and you can help build off of that and help each other where you're each at in your life. I mean, it's also a great time to get involved with group projects with people with those similar kind of ideals too, because you're motivated by the similar opportunities. So there's a lot of personal growth that I think can be potentially coming through this. And if you find the right people and you use that energy well, you can achieve a lot together in this next weekend with this energy. I really think it can be a really beneficial thing for all of us to find who we're supposed to be with and working with and supporting one another in these times. All right. Well, there's a lot of work still in that Mercury retrograde, a lot of inner work still before we can bring out that outer, but we all have that gift somewhere in us that Leo represents. We all have that streak of individuality that Uranus represents, and we all have something we can contribute to the greater good and satisfy that Aquarius energy, satisfy that Saturn Jupiter of wanting to build something up, get through and figure out which relationships are blocking you, which ones where you're getting good support and there's a good back and forth and harmony, and that's the ones you want to focus on. But we still, a lot of times, still inside, guys, trying to figure that out inside first. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free video blog that I've been doing for years. I really appreciate it if you pass the link on right now. I'd really appreciate it if you can support me professionally. www.astrologicalwinds.com is my website where all my services are. If you'd like to give a donation, please, do that. Every $5 will give you a chance to win a free reading, and that is my Venmo is at Matthew-Lawton, Lauten, capital M, capital L, 2 T's in Matthew. And yeah, and I will see you guys all next week. And Mercury will be going direct next week, and that will start moving the energy forward again, and we'll have some other things to look at too. All right, until then, signing off here. Hope you all have a great week. Use this full moon, and remember, look at the 2 houses that 28 degrees Aquarius and Leo fall in, and that's the place in your chart where you're going to feel the energy of the full moon the most. I'll see y'all next week.